The wind at Arlington carried a quiet authority on not loud, not soft, just final. Rows of polished silver spires stabbed the sky, reflecting morning light. Bugles sounded in the distance. Blue uniforms filled the grounds like a sea of ceremony. Among the seated crowd was a woman in a plain white blouse and black trousers. She sat alone, no badges, no ribbons. Her posture was upright, her gaze fixed ahead. Two cadets in dress blues walked past her, whispering. "What's she doing in the honor section? Not even in uniform." A third cadet snickered. "Maybe she lost her place in the laundry rotation." She heard every word. She didn't flinch. But then came the podium announcement. "Ladies and gentlemen, please rise as we begin the Air Force Hall of Valor acknowledgement." As everyone stood, a protocol officer walked briskly toward the row. He bent low, whispered to her. "Ma'am, I'm sorry. You're not on the official combat wounded list. We'll need you to step out of the honor section." She didn't argue. She stood, quietly, no scene. But as she turned to leave, her shirt shifted, and a faded scar peeked through the white fabric near her collarbone. One cadet chuckled. "Botched plastic job?" That's when it happened. A voice thundered from the podium, breaking protocol, freezing the entire ceremony. "I shot her." Gasps rippled through the gathering. The speaker was a retired general. He stepped away from the mic, eyes fixed on her.
Syria 2008, friendly fire.
That scar on her chest. It's haunted me every night since. Silence, then murmurs, then shifting eyes. But she just kept walking. Dust storm kicking up. Helicopters thumping above the desert floor. Tents flapping. Radios crackling. Tension humming through the air. Inside the tactical tent, a 24-year-old pilot in flight gear stood at attention, sweat dripping, jaw clenched. Her name patch read, "Lieutenant Arden Voss." Before her stood General Reed, the same man from the memorial. Younger, more decorated. Beside him, two intel officers with satellite maps. "Voss, your orders were to pull back. Why did you proceed past the eastern ridge?" She replied sharply. "Because Echo Team's beacon was still active. They were alive. I had visual." Reed snapped, "You disobeyed direct orders." "The area was blacklisted. You put your entire crew at risk." Arden didn't blink. "Sir, Echo Team was dying. I made a judgment call." He slammed the map table. "Your judgment just killed 3 hostages. They were inside the compound when you struck." Her eyes flickered. Pain. Disbelief. Then she noticed something on the satellite. Image and something off. "Sir, those weren't hostages. Look at the heat signatures. That formation, and that's not human spacing. That's an ammo dump." Reed looked again, paused. "Dismissed, Lieutenant." As she exited, an intel tech leaned to Reed, whispered, "She's right. The overhead light was too bright." Beeping machines surrounded her. Her chest was wrapped in gauze. Blood still seeping. She gasped awake, and pain sharp in her ribs. Her breathing ragged. "Nurse, Lieutenant Voss, you're in medical. You were airlifted back after friendly fire. Stray shrapnel from one of our own drones." She blinked, trying to remember. Voice from the corner, "It was mine." General Reed stood by the curtain, hat in hand. His face unreadable. "I ordered the drone strike. We thought you were compromised." She stared, then turned her face away. "No charges will be filed," Reed continued, "but your clearance will be suspended. You'll be transferred to CONUS evaluation." "That's it?" Her voice cracked. "You shoot me, then ship me home like broken cargo?" No reply. He left. She never saw him again, not until Arlington. She stood by the edge of the parking lot, staring at the endless rows of headstones. Hands in pockets, silent, her blouse still wrinkled from the earlier scene. A young airman jogged up to her, not one of the earlier cadets. This one looked haunted. "Ma'am, I didn't know. About the scar. About you." She didn't respond. Was it real? What the general said? She looked at him for the first time. "The scar's real." The silence afterward was more painful than the shrapnel. He nodded. "They say you flew with Nightwing." She raised a brow. "Nightwing's not real. That's what I thought. Until today. The base was supposed to be asleep." But Arden stood before a wall-sized map, flanked by 2 silent officers in black unmarked uniforms. One pointed, "This ridge." "You breached it." She nodded. "Not by accident." Other officer, "You saw the drone coming?" "Heard it first." "And you didn't evade?" "Didn't have time." They exchanged glances, then slid a sealed folder across the table. Red stamped, "OP-7 Viper, eyes only. We want you to disappear." Excuse me? Your file. Your injury. Everything. You were never there. She laughed once, short and bitter. Why? Because Nightwing doesn't exist. Arden sat alone, unwrapping the gauze from her chest. The scar was jagged, raised. Not surgical, real. She traced it slowly with one finger. Then stood, walked to the closet, pulled a shoebox from the back. Inside, a photo. Her in flight gear, unmarked helmet, standing beside three others, faces blacked out with marker. Behind them, the blurred outline of a jet that never officially existed. Next to the photo, a patch. Torn, scorched. Barely readable. 7V. She closed the box, but her eyes stayed on it. She walked through marble halls with quiet purpose. Clerk at the desk. Do you have an appointment? She placed an envelope on the counter. Inside, her old ID, her injury report, and a photograph of the general with a timestamp from 2008. I'm here to request access to a redacted file, and to know why I was erased. The clerk scanned it and paled. This file requires multi-level clearance. I'll have to contact someone. She didn't move. Do that, the archive clerk returned, accompanied by a stone-faced civilian in a black suit. His voice was calm but carried weight. Lieutenant Voss, you're not authorized to request information on Operation 7V, nor should you be aware of its existence. She stared him down. You erased me, but you didn't erase the pain or the scar. The man sighed. Why are you resurfacing now? Because a cadet laughed at my chest, and a general confessed his guilt in front of 400 officers. A long pause. Then he nodded once. Come with me. They descended 3 levels into the cold belly of the building. He unlocked a vault door with dual key access. Inside, gray filing cabinets labeled only with codes. From a folder marked OP7V Phantom Operatives, he pulled a single photograph. You're not the only one. There were 12. She stared. Her hands shook slightly. How many are still alive? As far as we know, 2. Desert winds howled. Black-clad pilots prepped in total silence. No insignias, no flags. Just gear and purpose. Arden stood at her aircraft. A stealth prototype that didn't exist on any Air Force manifest. The mission was surgical. In, retrieve embedded SEALs, out. But radio silence hit hard. As they descended, a miscalculated drone strike from friendly command shredded her wing. She ejected mid-air at 500 knots. The screen went black. Voiceover. No one was supposed to survive that. She descended into the subway like a civilian. No medals, no rank, no ID. But in the shadows of the opposite platform stood a man. Burn-scarred, one eye covered. As she passed, he muttered just loud enough. Viper 7. Still breathing, huh? She froze. Turned. Reese? He smiled faintly. You never checked in after Syria. I was unconscious for 6 weeks. Buried the whole op, you? He shrugged. Contractor. Then cleaner. Now ghost. There are only 2 of us left. 3. I found Alina. She's in a VA hospice. Doesn't speak. Her eyes widened. Where? General Reed sat across from 2 current Joint Chiefs. She surfaced. Arden Voss. We erased that entire cell for a reason, Reed. She's not seeking revenge. She's looking for closure. And what happens when the press gets wind of a buried unit operated? Without chain of command. Clearance? That's why we give her one thing, something. An envelope slid under the door. No return address. Inside, a mission transcript. 80% redacted. But one name was left untouched. Lieutenant Arden Voss. Recommendation for Valor Unit Citation. She sat in silence. Then stood. Pulled out a storage trunk. Inside, her old flight suit. A patch torn from the right shoulder. A faded wing. She stitched it back in place. Reese waited beside a grounded stealth craft. Rusted, forgotten. You sure you want to fly again? I never stopped. She climbed in, flipped the switches. The cockpit hummed. The past had been buried. Now it roared awake. News reports filled screens. Storm stranded 17. Humanitarian workers in Frozen. Valley, no aircraft cleared to fly. The radar buzzed. But then, a single blip. Unidentified. High altitude. Precision pattern. F-22 Raptors scrambled, confused. Command, who is this craft? No response. Then, a voice crackled through the comms. Nightwing actual inbound. Get out of my air. Silence. Then awe. Holy hell, that's Voss. The mountain winds howled as storm clouds surged across the Rockies. Most aircraft were grounded and visibility was near zero. But in the midst of it, a shadow pierced the cloud wall. Sleek, unmarked, cutting through turbulence with surgical grace. Inside the cockpit, Lieutenant Arden Voss. Every control lit softly. Her fingers danced across switches with muscle memory. Oxygen mask tight, eyes locked. Radar pinged. Unidentified aircraft, state your purpose or you will be intercepted. Silence. She toggled the mic. Nightwing actual. Humanitarian extraction. Clear my air. A beat of silence. Say again who authorized. No one. I'm not here for permission. A pair of Raptors flanked her. Their pilots hesitated. Command, what do we do? She's flying something that doesn't match our specs. Back at NORAD, an old colonel's voice whispered, let her fly. That's Voss. A silent, windowless room. Arden and 5 others sat in a semicircle. Faces exhausted. One man had a bloodied bandage under his collar. Another woman's hand visibly trembled. A commander, civilian suit, stood before them. You are no longer Air Force. You are no longer military. You are now Nightwing. No IDs, no patches, no protocols. Your only directive, do what others can't. Or won't. He paused. If you're caught, we don't know you. Arden spoke. And if we die? Then you were never alive. Snow blew sideways across the jagged ridges. A rescue team huddled around a distress beacon in a collapsed cabin. 17 aid workers, injured and freezing. Radio crackled. Unidentified aircraft approaching. Low altitude. No transponder. Then a roar. Snow kicked up. Wind swirled. The stealth jet landed like a ghost, skis touching down over frozen rock. From it stepped Arden, no rank. No badge, just command in her stance. She helped load the first 2 patients into the emergency cabin. The team leader looked at her. Who the hell are you? She simply said, late. Dozens of analysts stared at screens showing Arden's jet. This aircraft doesn't exist on any known registry. She shouldn't be able to fly it alone. She shouldn't even be alive. General Reed entered silently, eyes fixed on the screen. Pull up Operation Nightwing. The analyst hesitated. Sir, that operation was burned. Pull it up anyway. Across the screen flashed 6 names, all redacted but one. Voss, Status, KEA. Desert, blood, smoke. Screams fading into the wind. Arden stumbled from her downed aircraft, helmet gone, chest bleeding from impact. A boy, no older than 12, stood by a makeshift wall, holding a walkie-talkie. She crouched beside him. Where's your family? They said you'd come. That was the last thing she remembered before the blast. A mine triggered beside her feet. Her body was retrieved hours later, but the report would say, missing. Presumed KIA. General Reed stood before senior brass. Voss is flying, on U.S. soil, in black-level aircraft. A civilian advisor snapped, we buried her. We buried the entire program. And now you get to decide. Do we stop her or do we finally explain why she was erased? Someone whispered, because she knew something. She returned in silence. The mission was done. She hadn't been thanked. She hadn't expected to be. She tossed her gloves on the counter. On her table, a stack of letters unopened, some from the Veterans Appeals Office. Others red-stamped classified. She picked one and opened it. Inside, a single photograph, blurry, satellite angle, but her eyes knew what it showed. A desert compound, burned, and a single white flag, not military. She sat down. Flashbacks surged. The boy, the wall, the walkie-talkie. She whispered to herself. It wasn't just a raid, it was a setup. She woke up in a hospital bed, wrists strapped lightly like a psychiatric patient. 2 men watched her from behind glass. She's not ready for reintegration, but she's breathing. That's already a problem. A third voice, give it a year. Then disappear her. The less people who know about 7V, the better. She stared at the one-way mirror and smiled. I can hear you. Reese met her under cover of darkness. You're playing with fire. Then why'd you come? He pulled out an old data drive. Recovered this from my old unit's locker. It's encrypted. Coordinates, comms, something big. Is this why they buried us? He nodded grimly. Whatever's on here. It scared them more than we ever could. Arden and Reese worked together in silence. Wiring, fuel recalibrations, heat shielding repairs. Every move was muscle memory. Every creak of the aircraft, familiar. You remember what it felt like? Reese asked. Flying? No, being alive. She paused, then said, not until this week. Night. Arden crouched behind broken wall fragments with 3 Nightwing operatives. Sweat ran down her spine. The compound in front of them glowed. Faint orange, heat signatures, pulsing on her visor. That's not weapon storage, she whispered into comms. They're running people through it. Reese's voice crackled back. Are we cleared to extract? We're not here to extract. Command said bomb and leave. Arden's eyes narrowed. Then they gave the wrong orders. She moved, alone, toward the compound. A secure round table, faces that don't appear on organizational charts. Contractors, intel chiefs, private defense liaisons. General Reed sat at the far end, calm but tired. You want to kill this story before it leaks? You can't. Why not? Snapped an advisor. She's not even in the system. She's outside the system, and that's exactly what makes her dangerous. She's not trying to go public. She's trying to remember. Another whispered, that's worse. Arden and Reese stared at the decrypted drive. Flickering images. A satellite feed of a drone targeting system. An authorization signature from a private firm, Thermex Defense Initiative. Timestamp, 1 hour before Nightwing was deployed. They sold us out, Arden whispered. Reese clenched his jaw. Our whole op was a cover. They used us to wipe evidence. And they used my scar to bury the rest. She stood. Not anymore. A young investigative journalist, Zoe Leung, flipped through her inbox. Another anonymous tip, another nothing. Until she clicked the attachment. Surveillance photo. Then another. A stealth jet on a mountaintop. Then a redacted military file. Subject, Voss. Arden, status, unconfirmed Kia, connected to 7V operation. She leaned back in her chair, breath short. Who the hell is this woman? Screaming. Gunfire. Arden dragged 2 unconscious captives through smoke. As she emerged, a drone buzzed above, friendly but wrong. A light blinked. We're not cleared for overheads, she shouted. Too late. A blast, fire, dirt, silence. Night. Arden crouched behind broken wall fragments with 3 Nightwing operatives. Sweat ran down her spine. The compound in front of them glowed. Faint orange, heat signatures, pulsing on her visor. That's not weapon storage, she whispered into comms. They're running people through it. Reese's voice crackled back. Are we cleared to extract? We're not here to extract. Command said bomb and leave. Arden's eyes narrowed. Then they gave the wrong orders. She moved, alone, toward the compound. A secure round table, faces that don't appear on organizational charts. Contractors, intel chiefs, private defense liaisons. General Reed sat at the far end, calm but tired. You want to kill this story before it leaks? You can't. Why not? Snapped an advisor. She's not even in the system. She's outside the system, and that's exactly what makes her dangerous. She's not trying to go public. She's trying to remember. Another whispered, that's worse. Arden and Reese stared at the decrypted drive. Flickering images. A satellite feed of a drone targeting system. An authorization signature from a private firm, Thermex Defense Initiative. Timestamp, 1 hour before Nightwing was deployed. They sold us out, Arden whispered. Reese clenched his jaw. Our whole op was a cover. They used us to wipe evidence. And they used my scar to bury the rest. She stood. Not anymore. A young investigative journalist, Zoe Leung, flipped through her inbox. Another anonymous tip, another nothing. Until she clicked the attachment. Surveillance photo. Then another. A stealth jet on a mountaintop. Then a redacted military file. Subject, Voss. Arden, status, unconfirmed Kia, connected to 7V operation. She leaned back in her chair, breath short. Who the hell is this woman? Screaming. Gunfire. Arden dragged 2 unconscious captives through smoke. As she emerged, a drone buzzed above, friendly but wrong. A light blinked. We're not cleared for overheads, she shouted. Too late. A blast, fire, dirt, silence. The morning fog rolled in like memory itself, heavy, quiet, and uninvited. Arden Voss stood before the memorial wall. Her fingers gently touched the cold metal. Names of the lost. She wasn't on it. She never had been. Behind her, voices whispered. 2 tourists, a veteran, and a child, all watching her from a distance. Is that her? She's the one from the news. I thought she was dead. She stepped back and turned. You're looking for ghosts. I was one. Not anymore. Bright lights. Nervous pacing. Zoe Leung, the young journalist who uncovered Arden's case, adjusted her mic. Her producer whispered, You sure you want to go live with this? She agreed to speak. Not for pity. For truth. They're watching you, you know. The brass. She smirked. Then I hope they have good seats. The camera red light blinked on. Tonight on Ground Zero, the story of a woman erased by the military. She served, and why her scar says more than her silence ever could. Arden, pale and weak, sat across from a pair of masked interrogators. She hadn't seen daylight in months. Why did you break formation? Why did you go back for the boy? Why didn't you follow command protocol? Her answer was always the same. Because I saw the truth. Click, another recording device. Another session? Behind the glass, a younger General Reed looked on, not angry. Just ashamed. He turned away. A formal hearing was underway. Chairs filled with top brass, senators, analysts, and defense contractors. A name echoed through the mic. Arden Voss. She stood at the center of the chamber, not in uniform, not in chains. Just in truth. A senator asked coldly, "Are you confirming that the United States operated an unofficial, off-the-book strike team without congressional oversight?" "I'm confirming that we existed, and that we were sent in to do what no one wanted to admit was necessary until it failed." Gasps, silence. "And what exactly failed?" She looked at him, her scar visible just above her collar. "Not us, the ones who sent us." Flashback to the night before. Reese sat across from Arden in a dim hotel room. He was cleaning a sidearm out of habit. She sipped coffee, staring out the window. "You sure you want to walk into that building?" "They erased me once. They won't do it again." "You're not scared?" She looked at her scar in the mirror. "Of them, no. Of forgetting who I was? Every day." He nodded. "And don't forget, and don't let them rewrite it again." Another senator spoke. "Your medical records show you were injured in an explosion caused by friendly fire."
Can you confirm?
"Confirmed. But those records were redacted. Do you know who did that?" "I don't have proof of who, but I have proof of why." She laid out a printed satellite image, the same Thermex-linked file they'd decrypted. The room gasped. "This is classified." Then maybe it's time it wasn't. Arden sat across from a female intel officer. "You saved 14 civilians. Risked your life. Took fire from our own bird. And this is where we thank you and vanish you." "What?" "You're a problem, Lieutenant. You survived something you weren't meant to. You saw too much. So we'll give you two options, which are..." The officer smirked. "1, retire honorably and say nothing. 2, disappear, officially dead. Unofficially silent." Arden asked, "What if I talk?" "Then you'll die for real." Crowds waited. Protesters, supporters, media vans. As Arden walked out of the chamber, camera shutters erupted. A young cadet stepped out from the crowd. "Ma'am, I just wanted to say thank you. My sister was in that Syria aid convoy. She came home because of you." Arden's face softened. "She's the one who mattered. I just flew the jet." The cadet saluted. She didn't return the salute. She placed her hand on her heart, over the scar. General Reed sat alone, staring at an old mission log. A junior officer entered. "Sir, her testimony's gone viral. Public support is growing. She wasn't supposed to come back." "She did, sir. And she's not alone. On screen, a new file. 2 more Nightwing names unredacted by journalists." Reed whispered, "It's unraveling. We talk a lot about heroes, about medals, honors, and valor. But what about those who were never supposed to be known? The ones used, discarded, and forgotten? What happens when ghosts ask for nothing more than truth?" Images roll. Arden leaving the Senate. The wall of names, still missing hers. Protesters holding signs. "We believe her." Unredact Nightwing. A military gravestone with no name. And finally, Arden watching the sky from a rooftop, eyes steady. Dark, damp, forgotten. A lone mechanic worked beneath a tarp-covered jet. Arden, limping, entered, bruised but alive. "I need a favor." The man, Chief Halbrook, once her mentor, but didn't look up. "You're supposed to be dead." "Yeah, well, I'm bad at following instructions." He grinned. "What do you need?" "Something that flies. Something quiet." Halbrook pulled back the tarp, revealing a dusty prototype jet with no tail number. "She's yours. But this one's not on any ledger." "Neither am I." A row of gravestones stretched into silence. Arden walked among them until she found it. What Arden Voss, KIA 2008. Her own grave. She knelt beside it, touched the stone. Someone approached, unquiet boots on grass. It was General Reed. "That stone wasn't my idea, but you didn't stop it either. You were buried because the truth was heavier than your casket." She stood. "And now?" "Now the weight's on me." She looked at the name one last time. Then carry it. Maps, files, and red string covered the walls. Arden and Reese stood over the latest decrypted segment from the Thermex drive. A list of sites, contracts, names. But one name jumped out. Senator Barrow, Defense Committee Chair. Arden, that's the man who tried to shut down my hearing. Reese, and the man who approved the black. Budget for Thermex in 2007. She stared at the name. If I confront him, he'll shut the door. Then we go through the wall. A luxurious ballroom. Crystal chandeliers. Laughter behind champagne flutes. Among the donors and officers, Arden in a sleek black dress. Scar hidden but not gone. Barrow stood at the center, shaking hands. She approached, cool and composed. Senator Barrow, I'm Arden Voss. He froze mid-smile. You're the ghost. You buried my name. I thought I'd return the favor. He glanced at the aides. Let's take this somewhere quiet. Dim light. Closed door. Barrow, you should have stayed dead. You were safer that way. Arden, you authorized Thermex. You gave them the budget, the airspace, and the clearance. You don't have the clearance to accuse me. She pulled out a USB. Maybe, but the world does. He stepped closer. I'll ruin you. She met his eyes, calm. I've already been ruined. Now I'm just done being silent. She walked out, leaving him alone, sweating. We've obtained exclusive files showing a direct link between Senator Barrow's defense contracts and a buried Black Ops unit known as Nightwing. Photos appeared on screen, redacted orders, budget trails, and finally, Arden's grave marker, dissolving into a photo of her alive. Her name is Arden Voss. Her story isn't just survival. It's exposure. It's dignity. And it's the truth military silence tried to erase. The memory returned clearer now. The boy she rescued was holding something, not a radio. It was a camera. Arden knelt, bleeding, but he gave her the camera. My brother told me to film, in case you didn't come back. The images from the camera, later buried. Arden had never remembered that. Until now. General Reed sat across from Arden once more. No ranks now. Just two people with history. I came to tell you. You were right back then. About everything. She didn't gloat. You made me disappear. I know. He placed something on the table. A service medal. Untouched. Never awarded. This belongs to you. She pushed it back. No, that belongs on a record I never had. A crane lowered a new plate onto the monument. Polished engraved, L.T. Arden Voss, Nightwing Unit, active. 2006-2008, status returned. Crowds gathered. A hush fell as she stepped forward. Reporters asked questions. She didn't answer. She just stared at the wall, then up. The sky was quiet. She flew in silence. She bled in secrecy. She healed without ceremony. And when the world asked her who she was, she said, I was forgotten, but I never forgot who I am. Footage rolls. Nightwing patch and glass at a museum. The stealth jet under restoration. A young cadet reading about her. Reese walking past the old black site, now demolished. Zoe typing her last line. And Arden walking down an airstrip alone, flight suit on, wind catching her hair. Then, a whisper through radio static. Nightwing actual, cleared for takeoff. A heavy blast door hissed open. Dust spiraled as natural light poured into the underground hangar for the first time in 17 years. Arden stepped forward. Behind her, a team of base historians and junior cadets stood in silence. The lead cadet whispered, We didn't even know this place existed. Arden, that's because you weren't supposed to. She walked past an old bench. Her initials, AV, carved into the steel. Still there. A plaque had been left on the wall, dusty and crooked. Nightwing Unit, removed from record 2008. She reached up, straightened it. Senator Barrow had resigned, but the ripples hadn't stopped. A special subcommittee reviewed Arden's files, flight logs, encrypted audio, and the recently uncovered Thermex contracts, all now leaked. General Reed briefed the council. This isn't just about Arden Voss, it's about accountability. We've run too many wars off the books, too many heroes off the page. A young analyst entered with urgency. There's more, sir. Everyone turned. The Syria op was a decoy. Thermex was hiding something else. Arden's memory flickered. That mission? It hadn't been an evac. It had been a search. She remembered the boy's camera. The flashes. The silence. She hadn't just saved lives. She had seen something. A convoy of black trucks. Equipment with unmarked crates. Civilian scientists escorted by Thermex guards. A woman screamed. Then gunfire. Back then, she didn't understand. Now, she did. They weren't after enemies, she whispered aloud. They were after witnesses. Zoe walked through the nearly finished Nightwing Forgotten Flight exhibit. Display cases held Arden's old helmet, Reese's field logs, and the once-erased mission map now fully restored. An Air Force archivist explained, "We had to dig through decommissioned storage. Most of this was boxed under civilian code names, hidden on purpose." Zoe touched the edge of the helmet glass. "We're not here to rewrite history." "No, but we are finally allowed to write it." Arden sat with Alina, one of the last remaining Nightwing members. Alina's hand trembled. Her voice was barely a whisper, but the light in her eyes had returned. "They finally know?" Arden nodded. "Your name is in the museum now." Tears welled in Alina's eyes. "I thought we died for nothing." "We didn't." She held Alina's hand gently. "We just had to outlive the silence." News segments spanned across the country. Veterans saluting in front of Arden's updated memorial. Cadets in training using Nightwing cases as ethical study material. Protests outside Thermex headquarters. No more shadow wars. A civilian mother held a photo of Arden with her child. "She saved my son." We were just statistics back then. Now we have names. A low-lit conference room. Analysts and military historians reviewed newly declassified intel. One officer pointed at a wall map. "There's a pattern. Syria, Yemen, Niger. All black sites disguised as medical evacuations. Nightwing's missions were cleanup ops. Not rescues, damage control. And the ones who survived were silenced." One analyst stood nervous. "Sir, we're looking at a pattern of covert suppression of not just missions, but operatives." General Reed leaned back, grave. This wasn't negligence. It was a machine. Stacks of letters from former operatives' families piled on her desk. Each envelope was handwritten. One read, "My father served with you. Thank you for remembering him." Another, "They told me my mother ran away. You told me the truth." She read each one slowly, then looked in the mirror at her scar. "You didn't kill me. You just gave me something worth fighting for." She pulled on her patched flight jacket. Time to finish what they started. The footage was shaky. Body cam. Arden, bloodied, pulled from wreckage by a villager. The drone struck my wing. Friendly fire. Who gave the order? She was told to be silent. Medical personnel nodded, but no one answered. Later, while sedated, her dog tags were taken. Her name filed under KIA. A crowd gathered behind the security fence. A freshly repainted Nightwing jet rolled out under floodlights. Arden climbed into the cockpit, one final time. General Reed approached her solemn. "Where are you going?" "Back." "Why?" "Because I need to show the next girl with a scar." That silence isn't duty. Truth is, cockpit closed. The air was thin at 40,000 feet. The jet roared, and not with fury, but with purpose. Arden was alone in the cockpit. The old controls welcomed her like an old friend. She glanced at the dash. Her call sign had been etched manually. Ghost 1. Reese's voice crackled over the secure line. "They tried to scrub the entire 7V corridor. But there's a beacon out there. Broadcasting since 2008. Still active? Still coded to your flight signature." She adjusted altitude. "Then let's see what they buried out there." Arden landed silently under moonlight. The compound was mostly rubble. But under the ruins, a bunker. Steel hatch. Biometric lock. She pressed her scarred hand to the scanner. Green light. Inside, dust. Silence and power still running. She followed the corridor until she reached a terminal. One flickering monitor blinked. Nightwing, final record, active mission, never terminated. "They left it running?" She inserted a decrypted drive. Files streamed to the screen. This wasn't just about us. It was a holding station. A data mine. A war ledger. Names, coordinates, false flag operations. Civilian ops masked as military errors. Every mission they ever denied is here. Alarms echoed in the room. Analysts shouted, "Someone's activated Site Echo." That's impossible. That location was scrubbed years ago. General Reed was on a private channel. "I know who did it." "Do we shut her down?" He stared at the map. "No, we let her finish." The last data packet uploaded. Arden typed in a final command. "For public release, delayed 48 hours. A warning blinked. You are about to release classified evidence under wartime seal." She hit confirm. Then she turned to the wall. Old photos were pinned behind a glass case. Nightwing's full team. Training days, smiles, jokes. Dead, erased, forgotten. She pulled out her dog tags. Hung them gently on the wall. You're not ghosts anymore. Media chaos. TV screens erupted with data leaks. A scrolling banner read, Nightwing files released. Whistleblower identified as LT Arden Voss. Civilian reporters tried to summarize. These files confirm dozens of covert operations hidden under humanitarian covers, and show direct links between private defense firms and U.S. black budget contracts. The White House issued a statement. No denial, no confirmation. But the public had already chosen. She gave us what they wouldn't, the truth, a field under starlight. Young Arden and Reese sat beside their training glider. Reese, what scares you most about this program? Arden smiled. That they'll use us and never admit we were real. Reese looked up. Then don't let them forget us. They clinked tin canteens. A new monument stood beside Arlington's main path. Smaller, simpler. But on its steel plates, names that once were missing. Families stood shoulder to shoulder. Some weeping, others proud. Alina, in a wheelchair now, watched with Reese beside her. The speaker said, These weren't soldiers of fame. They were shadows of integrity. And today, they finally returned to light. In a classroom, young cadets watched archival footage. One raised a hand. Sir, who was Arden Voss? The instructor smiled. She was a pilot. A scarred one. A dismissed one. But more than that, she was a truth teller in a world of silence. Zoe played a voice message Arden left. Over the city skyline, her words echoed. I didn't do this for revenge. I did it because I couldn't carry ghosts forever. I carried them until they weighed less than my silence. And then I let them speak. Visitors passed by. Some paused. Some didn't understand. But the ones who did stood quietly. A small placard beneath the aircraft read, LT Arden Voss, Nightwing Operator. Erased, then remembered. A hot wind whispered over the sand. A young woman knelt, adjusting the sights on her rifle. She was new, just 19, but her movements were clean, focused. Across the range, an older figure approached. The girl stood sharply. Ma'am, are you the instructor? The woman removed her cap. It was Arden, weathered now. Not old, just more real. I'm not here to instruct. Just observe. The cadet hesitated. I heard stories about a pilot who flew dead, came back, and changed everything. Arden smiled faintly. Stories have their uses. This memory had stayed buried. Until now. Arden sat across from two CIA handlers. Her hands were bandaged, face bruised. Voice calm. You'll never find your name on any wall, one of them said. Then I'll make my own. You think truth survives command? She leaned in, hoarse. Truth doesn't need command. Just breath. She walked out before they could stop her. Zoe walked past endless black boxes, shelves stacked with untouched war footage, unnamed files. She paused at a drawer marked, Nightwing Debriefs, Unauthorized. She pulled one tape. It clicked into the old machine. On screen, Arden's face, young, direct. If this is found, I was probably forgotten. But I hope I'm not. If I never get a statue, that's fine. Just make sure they stop lying about us. Tears welled in Zoe's eyes. She pressed export. A group of old service members met under the open sky. No words, just patches, missing limbs, and fire in the eyes. At the center, a folding chair with a jacket draped over it. The Nightwing patch stitched clean. Arden arrived last. She saluted, not for approval, but for acknowledgement. A grizzled Marine approached. We used to joke your unit didn't exist. It didn't, until it did. Reese sat alone before a camera. His hair was silvering now. She saved my life. In Syria, in D.C. But more than that, she saved my name. She made sure we weren't just numbers. We were people. Soldiers with scars that mattered. The interviewer asked, Do you think she's still a soldier? Reese didn't hesitate. She never stopped. The young cadet finished her last target round. Arden walked beside her. You've got control. Calm hands. You'll go far. Thank you, ma'am. I heard you flew the Ghost Wing. Arden chuckled. They called it that. We called it survival. The girl hesitated. Was it worth it? Being erased? Arden looked up at the sky. Only because I came back. Because I told it the way it was and not how they wrote it. In a dim hangar, Arden kissed a photo of her parents taped to her locker. She knew the mission might kill her, but she also knew silence would kill more. She left the locker open, her journal inside. The last entry said, "If I disappear, I was real. If I'm forgotten, I'm still flying. If I'm remembered, fly harder." Live, one camera, no stage. Arden sat in a plain chair. "My name is Lieutenant Arden Voss. I was marked KIA in 2008. That was a lie. I flew missions no one would own, buried teammates no one admitted, and lived in a silence they depended on. But silence is not duty. And dignity doesn't ask permission." The anchor asked, "Do you consider yourself a hero?" She answered, "No, I consider myself heard." "That's enough." A formation of jets flew overhead in perfect silence. No trails, no names. Just 4 sleek shadows across the red sky. On the ground, a small plaque caught the light. "For those who flew, fell, and were finally seen." Arden stood beside Reese and Zoe. Nobody clapped. Nobody shouted. They didn't have to. The young cadet returned to her barracks. A package waited on her bunk. No return address. Inside, a copy of the Nightwing patch, a faded dog tag, and a worn leather-bound journal. The first page in Arden's handwriting, "They said I didn't belong." But then the silence cracked. And I realized, the truth doesn't vanish. It waits. And now, it flies. She closed the book. Outside her window, a jet crossed the night sky. If this story moved you, share it. Because some scars aren't wounds, they're proof that silence didn't win. Subscribe to Black and Wronged for more untold truths. And tell us, have you ever met someone whose story was erased, but not their worth? Black and Wronged, we bring ghosts back into the light.